My father always believed money was the only true measure of a person's worth. On the day I decided to leave home, he made certain to illustrate how little he thought I was worth. Clearly, with a cruel smirk, he threw a crisp $99 bill at my feet. "Here's $99, he sneered bitterly. "That's all of failure, like you deserve." At 25, fresh out of college with a brand new engineering degree. My parents hadn't even bothered to attend my graduation ceremony, standing in the enormous cold expanse of our lavish living room, with nothing but a single suitcase containing all my possessions. I watched quietly as the bills floated down to the marble floor. Drifting like autumn leaves surrounding me was the immense wealth of the Miller family, gleaming crystal chandeliers, finely polished antique furniture, priceless paintings, everything proudly boasting our old money lineage. Our family had always been investment bankers. Generations had walked the prestigious halls of Miller & Sons Investment Group. It was expected a predetermined path every Miller son obediently followed, until I broke the tradition. Engineering, my father spat with disgust when I had first declared, "My major engineers are nothing more than glorified mechanics. No son of mine will waste his life tinkering with machinery." Yet I saw clearly what he and the rest of the family failed to notice while they meticulously counted their millions from traditional investments. I envisioned a different future, one built on technology innovation and limitless possibilities. The next great fortunes wouldn't be made in extravagant, wood-panelled offices. They would spring from humble garages and labs, created by minds daring enough to combine creativity with opportunity. My mother stood quietly near the grand staircase, sipping a martini, despite it. Barely being noon Charles Darling, she implored gently, "There's still time to fix this. Come back to the firm. Your father can smooth everything over with the board." I stared deeply at her, perhaps truly seeing her for the first time. Her carefully practiced smile had never quite touched her eyes. Throughout my childhood, I watched her value herself solely by the size and brilliance of her diamond rings, each one progressively larger, desperately trying to fill a void that seemed endless. "No, Mother," I said firmly. "I'm tired of being someone you both wish I was." My father's face darkened instantly, turning the fierce shade of red I had feared since childhood. "Then get out," he barked, voice filled with fury and disappointment. "You're no longer a Miller. You're walking away from your trust fund, your connections, your legacy, all for some foolish fantasy." Calmly, I knelt and picked up the $99 bill. It felt deliberately fresh and untouched, as if my father had specially instructed his assistant to withdraw a crisp note for this very act of cruelty. "Keep your trust fund," I said, placing the money carefully into my wallet. "I'll build something on my own." My father laughed bitterly, his voice echoing coldly against the high ceilings. "You build something you can hardly dress yourself?" He mocked, gesturing disdainfully at my simple button-down shirt and plain slacks, sharply contrasting his impeccable custom-tailored suit. "Without the Miller name, you're nothing." His harsh words echoed through my thoughts in the years that followed, driving me through countless sleepless nights and pushing me through every seemingly impossible challenge I faced. But at that moment, I simply smiled and quietly promised, "Just watch me." I stepped out of the mansion's grand doors, carrying nothing but $99 a single suitcase and the engineering degree my family considered worthless behind me. The iron gates of my childhood home slammed shut dramatically, marking an end and a beginning standing there. Reality set in. I had no car, no apartment, and only that small amount of cash. Yet, I possessed something my family failed to recognize: a clear vision of the future and the determination to make it real. Walking to the bus station, I bought a $65 ticket bound for Austin, Texas, and spent another $5 on a modest burger and fries sitting in a small greasy diner watching people and buses come and go. I took out my notebook and wrote 4 promises to myself. I would never rely on the Miller name. I would build something that mattered, and above all, I would change the world. just like that. I had an income and a place to sleep, even if my bed was just a pile of coffee bean sacks in a storeroom crowded with paper cups and boxes. During the day, I worked tirelessly at the cafe serving customers and brewing coffee at night. I pored over my sketches, perfecting designs for a groundbreaking energy storage solution, using the cafe's Wi-Fi to explore patents, and stay updated on the latest technological advancements. Olivia, one of my co-workers, would occasionally bring me leftover pastries after her shift, curious. She often glanced at my complicated diagrams and asked insightful questions that genuinely improved my understanding. One evening, as she studied my sketches, she asked, "So, basically, you're just making a better battery?" "Not exactly," I explained, patiently, showing her the intricate designs. Regular batteries waste a lot of energy during storage and transfer. I'm designing something new using a molecular structure that can store energy at nearly 99% efficiency. Her eyes widened. "Why isn't anyone else doing this already?" "Because it's considered theoretically impossible," I answered with a confident smile. But I think I found a way. After 5 months of working at the cafe, I'd saved enough money to rent a tiny room in a shared house living alongside 5 other tech enthusiasts. It wasn't much, but it offered me a desk, a quiet spot where I could focus deeply to supplement my income. I started freelance consulting, helping local startups solve challenging engineering problems. That's how I met Edward Evans after successfully solving a crucial power management issue for his startup. He expressed his gratitude. "Your solution saved us months of work. What else are you working on?" I hesitated briefly, then decided to trust him. Sharing my ambitious energy storage designs, Edward studied my technical notes carefully, silent and thoughtful. Finally, he spoke. "This could genuinely change everything, but you'll need serious funding to build a working prototype." "I know," I replied quietly, keeping my family's wealth and the abandoned trust fund to myself. "I'm working on it." Edward became more than a client. He connected me with Dr. Andrea Bell, a renowned molecular engineer at Oxford. She spent 7 intense hours challenging my ideas, meticulously seeking flaws. Eventually, she nodded slowly and said, "It's ambitious, possibly impossible, but if it works." She paused thoughtfully. "I know some people at MIT Lincoln Laboratories Energy Research Center. Would you like to use their facilities? Would I be interested in using one of the world's premier research labs?" Remaining calm, I simply replied, "Yes, I'd appreciate that very much." For the next year, my schedule was relentless. Mornings were dedicated to cafe maintenance, afternoons to freelance consulting, evenings to intensive research at MIT Lincoln Laboratory, and late nights to refining my designs. I lived on determination, caffeine, and endless hope. The breakthrough came unexpectedly, one night around 4 a.m. in the MIT Lincoln Laboratory lab. I had spent weeks meticulously testing different molecular configurations when the test results came back. I triple-checked them, stunned by the reality of what I was seeing. The prototype achieved 98.7% efficiency in energy storage, almost perfect and previously deemed impossible. Dr. Bell verified the results personally. "This isn't just a breakthrough," she said, amazed. "It's revolutionary." Within days, I was meeting with venture capital firms. Edward helped me craft my pitch, while Olivia tirelessly helped me prepare by challenging me with tough questions. The first 3 investors praised my idea but considered it too risky. The third, however, was different. Douglas, the lead partner at Vert.x Frontier Ventures, leaned forward and said, "Your technology could revolutionize renewable energy storage, but why should we trust a 24-year-old unknown?" Meeting his eyes confidently, I began my reply because I've spent the past year proving that impossible things can become possible. Give me a chance, and I'll prove it. Once more impressed by my determination, Vert.x Frontier Ventures invested $12 million for a 23% stake in my company, which I named Ether Grid Technologies, a personal nod to the idea of a new star emerging from nothing. With this funding, I established our research facility, assembling a small yet talented team of engineers. Together, we faced numerous technical hurdles, frequent setbacks, and moments when it felt like our dreams might collapse entirely. Yet, after 3 intense years, our hard work paid off. Our first commercial-scale energy storage system was finally ready for testing. When the results arrived, they surpassed even our wildest expectations. The system stored and delivered energy at an incredible 98.9% efficiency, 5 times better than the best existing technology. The breakthrough created waves in the energy industry, making renewable sources like solar and wind not just practical, but economically superior to fossil fuels. Suddenly, every major energy company wanted access to our technology. Ether Grid Technologies went public just 2 years after the initial investment from Vertex Frontier Ventures, and the stock price doubled within the first day. By week's end, my share of the company was valued at over $250 million. For the first time since leaving home, I bought a suit, not from the exclusive tailor my father preferred, but from a boutique catering to tech leaders. Olivia, now our head of operations, accompanied me, planning to impress someone special. She teased gently. "No," I replied, adjusting my new suit carefully, "but I think it's finally time for a visit home." I hadn't spoken to my family in 6 years, but through news reports and social media, I knew the once mighty Miller & Sons investment group was struggling. Traditional investment banking was fading, disrupted by financial technology and evolving markets, exactly as I had predicted years earlier, now facing a hostile takeover by a tech-driven investment firm called Digital Horizon Capital. They were confronting their greatest crisis. Yet what my family didn't know was that Digital Horizon Capital was a subsidiary of Ether Grid Technologies. My company, I booked a flight home reflecting on the incredible journey from having just $99 to my name to being worth hundreds of millions. Yet this wasn't about reconciliation or boasting about my success. I was going home to purchase the very company that had deemed me worthless. Before leaving, Olivia saw me thoughtfully examining an old family photograph. "Are you sure you want to do this?" she asked softly. I slipped the photo into my pocket and replied firmly, "They taught me that money is the only measure of worth. It's time to show them exactly what I'm worth." Little did I know how deeply my return would shake the Miller family, how bittersweet and complicated my revenge would become, or how profoundly the lesson they had taught me would ultimately cost them everything. The headquarters of Miller & Sons Investment Group remained unchanged, still imposing with its limestone facade, polished gold letters, an air of deep-seated arrogance. This time, however, I entered confidently through the front doors, not as the disappointing son, but as the CEO of the company, seeking to buy them out to Mr. Carter, here to see the board. I calmly informed the receptionist, using the name I'd adopted after leaving home. She directed me to the top floor, completely unaware that the prodigal son had returned. Entering the boardroom felt surreal. It was exactly as I remembered. The dark wood panels, oil paintings of past company leaders, and the family crest are proudly displayed above the fireplace. As a child, I'd hidden beneath that very table, quietly listening to my father conduct ruthless business deals today. I wasn't hiding, I was standing confidently in front of them, ready to reclaim my worth. I sat quietly at the head of the long, polished boardroom table, waiting one by one. The board members entered, followed by company executives, and finally, my father. Time had not been kind to him. He looked older than 4 years, should allow the weight of failing fortunes and relentless pressure, clearly showing in his posture and expression. His once commanding presence was dimmed, his confidence shaken. He didn't recognize me at first. His eyes passed over me without pause, as he took his seat. "Gentlemen," I began maintaining a professional tone. I'm here on behalf of Digital Horizon Capital regarding our offer to acquire Miller & Sons. We're not interested in being bought out by some tech-up. Start, my father snapped, still not truly seeing me. Miller & Sons have stood for 120 years, and it'll collapse within 5 more if it doesn't evolve. I replied, letting my natural voice emerge. Isn't that right, father? A heavy silence fell over the room. My father turned toward me, his face losing all colour, as recognition dawned. Charles, he breathed, hello, father miss me. Mr. Johnson, an elderly board member who had known me since I was a child, blinked in disbelief. Little Charles Miller, actually? I corrected gently. It's Charles Carter. Now, and I'm not here as your son. I'm here to discuss the future of this company. My father's expression turned from shock to fury. This is some kind of trick. You're working for Digital Horizon. I smiled, calm and composed. No, father, I own Digital Horizon. It's a subsidiary of EtherGrid Technologies. The room collectively gasped as realization swept through them. Yes, I confirmed that EtherGrid Technologies, the company leading the global revolution in energy storage, impossible. My father whispered, you left with nothing. No, I said softly. I left with $99. That was your final lesson about the value of money. Would you like to know what that lesson bought? I nodded toward my assistant, who began distributing neatly prepared folders to each board member. EtherGrid Technologies is currently valued at $8 billion Digital Horizon, which you somehow failed to properly investigate. Is our investment arm over the past year. We've quietly acquired Miller & Suntock through multiple channels. I opened my folder and looked around the table. As of this morning, we own 47% of your shares. We also hold the majority of your corporate debt, and given your recent financial difficulties, that debt is considerable. My father looked as though the air had been sucked from his lungs. The son he had written off as a failure had returned to claim control of everything he once held. Dear, the offer is simple. I continued. Miller & Sons will be absorbed into Digital Horizon. The family name will be retired. The board will be dissolved. I looked directly at my father, and you will step down effective. Immediately, you can't do this, he stammered. The family legacy is already dying. I interrupted. Your strategies are outdated, your systems are obsolete, and your pride has blinded you. I tried to warn you 4 years ago, but you were too stubborn to listen. Mr. Johnson cleared his throat. Charles, surely we can find another way. You're still a Miller? No, I said firmly. You all made it clear the day I walked out. I stopped being a Miller when I chose to build the future. Instead of clinging to the past, I'm not here to make peace. I'm here to finish what I started. I stood adjusting the finely tailored suit that now costs more than that. First $99 multiplied 1,000 times over. You have 48 hours to accept the offer. Refuse and Digital Horizon will call in every outstanding loan. Miller & Sons will not survive the week. My father finally found his voice again. You destroy your own family's company. Everything we built. No, I replied. You destroyed it when you refused to change. I'm offering a chance to save what remains. Jobs, clients, and, yes, the legacy. But whether that legacy still carries the Miller name, that's no longer your decision. I walked toward the door, then paused and turned back one last time. Oh, and father, remember that $99 you threw at my feet. Turns out it was the best investment you ever meant to make when you said money was the only measure of a man's worth. I said, my voice steady and cold. Then by your standards, what am I worth now? The next 48 hours flew by in a whirlwind of legal meetings and media coverage news of EtherGrid Technologies acquiring Miller & Son, sent shockwaves through the financial world. Stock prices wavered, rumours flew, and my father did everything he could to stop it. He called in old favours and tried to rally support, but I had already planned for every move. Every path of escape was blocked. Every potential saviour was already quietly on our side. In the same boardroom where he once tossed $99 at my feet, the papers were signed. My father's empire was now mine. As the final signatures were completed, he approached me. He looked older than ever, defeated. Yes. But behind his tired eyes was something I hadn't expected. Maybe respect, maybe just acceptance. "You planned this," he said quietly. "All of it." "No, father," I replied. "You did the day. You decided my dreams weren't worth respecting. I just built something better than you could ever imagine." He hesitated. "And now, will you tear it all down out of revenge?" I looked at him for a long moment. "No, I'm going to rebuild it into something that matters. Miller & Sons will become part of a company working to solve the global energy crisis, not just shuffling money between accounts that it's no longer yours." Well, that's just poetic justice as I turned to leave. He called after me, "Charles, that $99, I smiled. Best investment I ever made. It showed me exactly who I didn't want to become." The transition took 5 months. I overhauled everything, modernizing systems, shifting focus to clean energy, and keeping most of the employees. They weren't the enemy. My father had retired quietly to our old estate, his pride bruised, but his wealth preserved. I made sure he had enough to live comfortably. My mother reached out a few times, but I never responded. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. A year later, standing in my office at Ether, Grid Technologies overlooking Austin, Texas, Olivia brought in a small package from my father. Inside were the same crisp $99 bills he'd once thrown at me, along with a note, "You were worth more than I knew." I took those bills back to the cafe where everything began. The same barista who once offered me shelter now worked as a senior executive at Ether Grid, but the coffee was still the best in Menlo Park, California. I left the $99 as a tip. Some might say what I did was revenge, but it wasn't. I didn't take over my father's company to get even. I did it because sometimes, to fix something broken, you have to tear it down and rebuild it stronger. They say money can't buy happiness, but that $99 taught me something more important. True worth isn't measured by wealth or legacy. It's measured by what you build with what little you have. And I built an empire not because of my family name, but despite it, that 99 didn't just start my journey. It gave me the freedom to become who I was meant to be. And the millions I earned later, they were just proof that I'd been right all along.